Hello, welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, your host, and this is, let's see, where are we here? Episode 52, recorded on August 21st, 2013. You can see all the episodes of Walk in the Park at my blog site, walkinpark.com, also ithacafingerlakes.com, but walkinpark.com might be easier to remember. But today, we're going to take a look at the effects of the recent rains and indeed floods that the weather has had on our gorges, our trails, and our waterfalls. So what we're going to start off with is actually look at waterfalls that most people do not get a chance to see, and in fact some waterfalls that I hadn't even seen before. I'm going to do that by going with me last week out onto the MV Handle, which is a tour boat that goes out of the farmers market. It goes out of the Ithaca Boating Center. This was an afternoon tour. IthacaBoatTours.com is the name of the company, Ithaca Boat Tours. The MV Handle is the name of the boat. And we go out on Cayuga Lake, and from the farmers market, it's a 1-hour tour on the weekends. We're leaving from the dock there, but during the week, we have 2-hour tours, and I have been on the crew for that for quite a few years. So we went out last week along the east shore cliffs of Cayuga Lake, just north of Ithaca, and lo and behold, after all that rain we had, particularly August 9th, but also about early last week, we had some waterfalls on the cliffs. Now, most of the waterfalls that you see on the cliffs, on the east shore of Cayuga Lake, only happen from time to time when you have heavy rains, because these would be what you'd call intermittent streams. Their bottoms, they're small, some of them are gorges, but they're very small, and their bottoms of the valleys are above the water table. So they're not fed by springs, they're simply fed by runoff. So this is one of the first ones we rarely see except after heavy rains. And there's a whole parade of them. I saw close to 20 waterfalls, which is more than I've ever seen in these cliffs. Now this one here you rarely see. There's a big slot in the cliff just left of center. That's dropped out from natural joint fractures in the rock. And here's this little waterfall coming off. You hardly ever see this, but it's amazing. So you come up with some of the houses in the cliffs, and there's one there that I never see, pouring off the cliff. We had so much rain in August, and it just happened to catch it right. Here's a very cool one. This house, which has sort of an Asian or Oriental design motif to it, actually has a stream bed going right through the house. There's an arch on it. If you look at the waterfall just above it, you might be able to make out in the trees an arch. And when there is water flowing in the stream, it flows right underneath that arch in the house design itself, off the cliff into Cayuga Lake. So that's pretty amazing. Here's another one. Amazing waterfalls. You might want to get out there sometime soon and see what's still flowing. It's been dry a little bit this week, but hey, who knows? Now here's Esty Point, which is 2-3 miles up the east shore, and has Esty Glen in it, which is a high sort of amphitheater. And normally there's a little bit of water coming over that waterfall, but you almost can't see it from the boat. But this day, it's as much or more than I have ever seen. And it actually looks sort of like a mini Teganic Falls. So Esty Glen, Esty Point, I guess you'd call that Esty Falls. Continuing beyond, just beyond Esty Point and Esty Glen, are several beginning gorges there. There are gullies that are steep gullies in the cliffs on the side of the lake. And usually there's some water flowing in this one, but usually much, much less than this. I don't think I've ever seen as much as this, or certainly not more. And there's another gully there with a lot of water in it. That was just amazing. So we kept seeing more and more waterfalls. It's the side of the boat there. In the side of the cliffs along the east shore of Cayuga Lake. These cliffs are maintained by the constant beating of waves against the shore, whipped up by open water from 10 miles from west-northwest exposure of the lake, 10 miles of open water. The wind blows across it, whips up the waves, and bashes against this cliff. So it maintains the cliff. Finally we get up to Poison Ivy Point, and which is right next to Bolton Point, where There's the Bolton Point water plant, but this is just the southern edge of it called Poison Ivy Point. And if you look right in the center of this picture, you might be able to make out a waterfall. Well, normally on our 1-hour tours, that's as far as we go. Bolton Point, we cut across and go over to the Glenwood Point and the Ithaca Yacht Club area. But this 2-hour trip continues all the way up to Myers Point, and there were a whole bunch more waterfalls. Now you take a look at this. This is the next waterfall up from Bolton Point. Now, that's not much of a waterfall. Well, no. But why am I including it? It's because there's a layer of rock there, a rock formation that appears that's actually sloped and goes below the lake level south of here, but north of here, at least for a ways, this layer of rock rises as you go along. Now, here's another, not much water on it, waterfall, but you can see that blocky layer of limestone rising above lake level in this incline as you head north. Now there it is higher, and there's a substantial flow over this one, although normally not much, once again. And it rises higher. You can see the houses are perched right on top of this limestone. This is called the Tully limestone, and it's widespread in the area. And in fact, the bottom of Teganic Gorge is made of this very formation of rock. It's below it is shale, so the limestone is tougher than the shale. So that first waterfall at Teganic, when you walk up the gorge at Teganic, is like this. It's pouring over the limestone ledge above the shale. Finally, the ledge is actually way up in the woods here, and you really can't see the limestone anymore, but it is rising farther still. This is just down the hill from Lake Watch, that big development of fairly expensive houses that look to the northwest over Cayuga Lake when you're up there. But here's the waterfall here pouring off the top of the Tully limestone, and right to the right of the waterfall you may be able to make out a wooden staircase, which is the access to the lake shore for the folks at Lake Watch. But the staircase is in bad repair. I tried to climb it once, I think a year or two ago, and got real scared and didn't go any farther because it was starting to fall apart. But there it is anyway. So here a little farther along is a double waterfall. You might be able to make out the two ribbons, again pouring off the Tully limestone that's way up in the woods. And then this is the last waterfall that we saw. Not big, shrouded in the woods, but again coming off the top of the hill there. And then finally we get up to Myers Point, and we cut across the lake and come back down the west shore on the 2-hour trip. So I must have seen, I didn't show them all, but I must have seen 20 waterfalls on this advance across Cayuga Lake. So that's a pretty neat thing. So you may want to get out there and try that. Well, you know, obviously we have some very settled waterfalls here, reliable waterfalls in our state parks and so forth. So let's take a look at that. Well, here's Buttermilk Falls. This was the I think it was August 10th, the day after the really heavy rain. We're going to look at a very short video. It's in a series I've started called Park Minute, which is going to show you Buttermilk Falls. So let me get to that, and I'll be with you just a second here. On August 9th, 2013, heavy rain swelled Buttermilk Creek in the gorge upstream from Buttermilk Falls. It's always a worry that high water may damage the beautiful stone walls and steps along the Gorge Trail. But they seem to have weathered the storm, though there was significant trail damage in nearby Robert H. Treman State Park. Buttermilk Falls demonstrates its name in weather like this. The swimming area will have to be cleared of gravel and debris before reopening. Okay, so that's one of my little Park Minute series. If you watch the show, you will probably see that. If you go on my blog, you'll see me when I put up Park Minutes. I try to do one a week, more or less. But I mentioned there was a trail damage over at Treman State Park, 2 miles south of Buttermilk Falls, south of Ithaca. And let's go over to the swimming area there. Oh, okay, this one I was provided by a friend, a Facebook friend actually, this picture of Lori Sedge. Thank you very much, Lori, for this. This is the swimming area at Robert H. Treman State Park. You can see the lifeguard stand back there. This was at the height of the flood, I guess, probably very early in the day. And the swimming area has been trashed for the season, it looks like. It fills in all the diving area with gravel. In fact, a week before they had made progress just getting the gravel and so forth washed in from an earlier flood that wasn't quite as destructive, but it certainly filled it in, to open up a swimming area again, and then this happened. So we're done for the season, which ends on the last day is Labor Day anyway, but the swimming at Buttermilk Falls is still open. So let's look at some of the damage at Robert Treman. Robert Treman took some heavy damage. So this is the upper park. This would have been last week, about a week ago, probably the 14th, I think it was. Yeah, this would have been the 14th. This is having cleared a lot of mud at the entrance in the upper park there. First bridge of the park entrance road is all jammed up with trees that were washed down Enfield Creek from up the hill. It must have had twice as much rain over Connecticut Hill and so forth that feeds Enfield Creek than you had at Buttermilk Creek. And so there was quite a lot of damage. This is the other side of the bridge looking downstream into the park, and look how high the water went and just ripped away everything that could be pulled away by a flood along the stream there. So here's some of these pictures are provided by Josh Teeter, who is the environmental educator for the Finger Lake State Parks. And this was one he took, I think, probably in the 10th, right after the flood, and maybe it was the 9th. Anyway, this is gravel and cobbles and so forth that were distributed over parking lots and what have you. Here is when you get into the upper park, there's a bridge that goes over the picnic area, and that was all covered. And in the background there's a parking lot, and that parking lot had some 3 feet of gravel and stones in it. I talked to a heavy equipment operator who was digging that out, and they had dug out some 3 feet of gravel. Pretty amazing. Looking downstream from this bridge, again, you can see the flood zone from that terrible inundation. So now we're going to take a look at, not the roads, but we're going to take a look at some of the footbridges that have been damaged by in the upper park area, the damage by the flood. So let's look at that. Here's the first one. This is by the end of the parking lot, by the picnic pavilion, crossing to the picnic area. Now it looks okay from here, but if you look on the other side, you can see the abutment the top part of the abutment is gone. So the bridge is very unstable now. That's going to take some considerable work to fix. And then we're looking down to the next footbridge that had stone walls or parapets over it just before you get to the Gorge Trail, also crossing to the picnic area. And those stone parapets are gone. In fact, they were washed over by the flood. Now this was taken by Josh the day after the flood, or maybe the same day. And all of the stone walls on the side of the bridge have been pushed over to the end of the bridge. It looks like people had placed them there, but they haven't. Here's another shot he took. Just pushed them right off the bridge. And here's one I took last week, showing the bridge with no stone walls on it. So that's closed, and that will have to be fixed. So now we're going to go into the gorge proper and see what happened. Now I took this picture here. The Gorge Trail is closed. The entire Gorge Trail is closed all the way down to the lower park because there's damage in the upper gorge, but all the way down there's damage too. I talked to a park staff person today who said that they're hoping to get the Gorge Trail opened up the lower part up to the footbridge that joins it with the rim trail, it's called, that comes down from the ridge above. Sometime this season soon, but the rest of it, the upper Gorge Trail, don't count on that being open because, well, first of all, here's the first stone bridge that crosses the end of with a slot gorge, we call it, very photogenic place. I probably should have included a picture of what it normally looks like. But its stone wall there was partially taken out, and the rest of it, the mortar, I talked to one of the masons, the mortar was so badly eroded that they had to just take it off and start over. So there they are. Masons are already working on replacing the walls on that beautiful arched stone bridge at the end of the first section of narrow rectangular gorge. Here's some of the masons' markers and so forth to guide them in putting up the new walls. And then down in an area called Devil's Kitchen, just around the bend from that, here's the corner in the wall that's been blown out by the flood. And then some more damage on the trail there. Aha! That's Lucifer Falls, 115-foot high Lucifer Falls, the biggest waterfall in the park, and the Gorge Trail comes down just above that to the right. You may be able to make that out. Now this was taken by Josh, and the water had come down because it had gone up on the trail. So this is actually when you could probably photograph it, because I'm sure at its height it would have been making so much mist and spray that the entire gorge would have been shrouded in the spray, because I've seen it like that in the past. So let's take a look at what it, let's see, I came back like this was the next week and looking at that same scene, plenty of water in the falls, but we're going to take a closer look. We're going to go and take a closer look at the this scene and see some of the damage to the trail. So I'm going to go back to another video that I put together, and we'll watch that in a sec here. So I zoomed in, as you saw, on some of the damage. Here's some stills. This is looking at the trail right next to the top of Lucifer Falls there. You can see that it is blown out, gone, and obviously the water went over the wall and right down the trail itself, and there's a corner there. This picture taken by Josh last week. Looking where the wall is gone, right at that corner of the top of Lucifer Falls, and that creates a kind of a dangerous situation. You don't really want that exposed like that. And then the other area just down below, looking back towards Lucifer, is this bend in the trail that many people stop and look back at the falls to what would be the left from this perspective, how it's jammed in there. The water went down and jammed debris, mostly logs and branches and stuff, into there, so that have to be cleaned out. Here's another picture of debris on the trail near Lucifer. Josh took this one. And farther down the Gorge Trail, there are other places where the trail has been washed out and there's damage to bridges and what have you. So it's a mess. And like I said, they're going to try to get the Gorge Trail open up at least to almost to the upper gorge, but it's going to take them a lot of work to do all that stone masonry and what have you to get the Gorge Trail, the upper gorge where the big waterfall is. However, you can see this. Let's see, go back to this view. You can see this view from the rim trail, which starts in the upper park and goes along the rim, and you get this view from the overlook, another view down the gorge just nearby. But so you can see Lucifer Falls. You just can't stand right next to it anymore, not for now anyway. And You have to wait till next season to get by the falls. This happens every few years, and it's just one of those things. As the park manager at Teganic Falls told me years ago, if God meant there to be trails and gorges, he would have put them there. So it's a rugged environment. So let's go back to Buttermilk Falls. This was the swimming area we were looking at there, and they did get that back open. That was a goal. That was achievable. So now the swimming area is back open. This is I took just yesterday, and you can go swimming at Buttermilk Falls. They have it open 7 days a week through Labor Day. This is up the trail above the first section of falls, looking back at the swimming area. There's a nice overlook they built there a few years ago. And looking at the second fall, the second section of falls, a nice water on it. So go hike at Buttermilk. You can hike in the gorge. And I noticed this, well, actually I was kind of looking for it. I expect it every year. Right along the side of the falls here, there is a colony of these wildflowers. And these are called to green-headed coneflower. It's in the Aster daisy family. Rudbeckia laciniata, not laciniata. So it has this big, it's a big flower, a big plant. And we find it growing next to Buttermilk Falls, also find it growing near Lucifer Falls and other wet places. So we might look for that and many other wildflowers that are out this time of year, large ones. And so now we're going to take a little trip out on, let's see, we'll take a little trip out on Cayuga Lake now again. Excuse me. This time we're going to go with the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom, and the Ithaca Journal had a nice article last week about the floating classroom, and they had a short video they made, so I took the liberty to borrow that video, and we'll bring that up now and just go there and see if I can get that rolling for you here.
On Sundays, the Cayuga Lake Floating Classroom departs from the dock at Ithaca Farmers Market for a 2-hour eco cruise combining elements of a narrated tour with lake science and hands-on activities. The cruises provide first-hand experience of a waterway carved by long ago departing glaciers, with eco tours highlighting today's ecology and fragile health of the lake.
Most people don't realize that most of their drinking water comes from Cayuga Lake. Without Cayuga Lake, we'd have a little issue with 100,000 plus people getting water every day. So it allows them to be able to look at where their water comes from and be a little more in tune with next time they have an oil leak in their car or gas leak, to maybe get that fixed a little quicker. You know, they know if they're parked in the parking lot at Wegmans and there's a rainstorm, all of that comes right into the lake. We have curly leaf pondweed right here. This is one of the quickest growers of the season. This will grow at about 12, 14 feet in length. It'll get a small floater growth on the top. The stems will break away. There'll be a seed pod on the top. It'll float around. You also see a big floating weed mass around the 4th of July weekend area. Tends to happen with most people against boat traffic. It's actually the weeds just in the natural life cycle. Then seed pods will disperse off of that, drift down to the bottom. It's a native species. We've also got coontail right here. Another native species. You see a bunch of the zebra mussels attached to it. Inside, and samples in the water. It looks like that's about all we've got in those two species right here. Oftentimes you'll see Eurasian milfoil in there, Elodea. See a short-leaf pondweed as well. A couple other species that are will develop later on in the summer.
Well, again, this is a lot of mostly zooplankton. The bigger creatures that you can see skirting around the edge, like near where my thumb is, those are called amphipods. They're actually large members of the zooplankton community. Most of these are only large enough to be seen. Well, they can only get large enough so we can see them when we put them under the microscope, which is why we carry some on board. We actually had a tour go out last week with a bunch of young girls, and they were fascinated by what they were seeing under the microscope. I remember coming out here myself for the first time.
Yeah, they were really excited.
Yeah, and I was amazed the first time I came out too, just to see how much you don't see in the lake. So usually you look at like a jar or something, you take a bucket of water, and you don't see much. You see just like what looks like clear water. Maybe it's a bit cloudy if it's been raining. But then you strain it through the nets that we use to collect this plankton, and you realize just how much life we really have in this lake. It's quite amazing.
Okay, so so the MV Handle, that boat, is both a tour boat and it's also a floating classroom, and during much of the week that's what it's doing. So, and that will, both operations continue through October. So now we're going to take a quick trip to Long Island. I happened to be there last weekend, and I visited a park. I always try to visit a park wherever I go somewhere. And if you look at the long fish shape of Long Island there, you see right in the middle of the top of the island, the northern edge, there's this sort of bay that dips down, and right in there is, we'll zoom in on this map actually at a beach, and you'll see a dark area that's at the bottom edge of this map. That's Sunken Meadow State Park. And I used to go there as a kid. I lived in Long Island when I was a kid, so this is the entrance to the park. The big beach parks on Long Island have these toll gate-like entrances, and you pay to get in that way. And get into a big parking lot, and then you walk into a beach house and snack bar and so forth, and out onto this 3/4 mile long boardwalk. And of course there's the beach, and people were out there. This was actually last Sunday. It's kind of a cloudy, not so warm day, but still nice. And looking off to the east, the bay on the right actually is fed by a river called the Nissequogue River, and Nissequogue State Park comes in there. But I'm going to zoom in a little bit and look at those bluffs at the other side of the bay. They're very similar to the bluffs that you have along Lake Ontario. The northern edge of Long Island, let's see if you get back there, the northern edge of Long Island is somewhat hilly, and that is made up of what's called the Harbor Hill Moraine. There's also something called the Ronkonkoma Moraine, excuse me, in the middle of the island. In fact, all of Long Island is made of glacial deposits that were dumped there by the glacier about 20,000 years ago. So anyway, I like to compare that to, one of the reasons I wanted to go there is look at, well, this is Fairhaven Beach on Lake Ontario. And look at the bluffs there, and those are drumlins. It's very analogous to what you have on the north shore of Long Island, the south shore of Long Island Sound. So just flip through, we're almost done here. Some people fishing, there's some more bluffs. A lot of people were out fishing beyond the swimming area, beyond that jetty. You just might have noticed folks out along the shore fishing. So that was pretty cool. And these are a couple of great black-backed gulls, the largest gulls in the world. You see them there. You do see them on Cayuga Lake too, but they're much more common along the shore, and they're fun to watch. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So we're going to wrap it up here, and thank you all for joining me in Walk in the Park. We'll see you again soon. Have a good week.